In this tutorial, I am going to describe what is variable scope in PHP. This is a very important thing in any programming language, and like others, PHP has the variable scope. So total 3 variable scopes are available in the case of PHP. One is global scope, another one is local scope, another one is static keyword. That is another scope. I am going to tell you what is actually the global scope. Global scope is something like that, a variable which is declared outside any function can only be accessed outside a function. You cannot access it inside a function. That will give you an error. So let's check it. I am going to my editor and I am going to describe you about the global scope. For example, I call a variable. For example, I call a variable is 30. Now I am going to create a function myAge, and here I am going to write something like this age, that is echo. Then I call myAge function. The age 30 which is outside the function is global scope, because what I said is a variable declared outside the function can be accessed only outside the function. Now you see that I called this variable inside this function, but here the variable has no value. What is function? I will describe it more afterwards, but for now think that this is just like a block and this is the call of the function. I call a function to work or to do a single task many times. So in that function is called here. In that function I wrote something like that echo age. That means the age value has 30. I want to try to echo that value inside a function, but it is not possible because in the global scope I called the value, I assigned the value outside the function. Now if you want to run this code, I am going to run this code, you will see that undefined variable is on line number 4. That means this is giving you an error. But after the function is ended, if I call the variable and want to output, show output, it will be shown because this is outside the function. So global scope means this will be outside the function, and from outside the function I can call it from anywhere. So it is outside the function. So if I now want to run this, you see that the 30 is giving here. If I close it, now you will see that the output is 30. That means this line is showing no error. This is correct, but here you cannot do it. So this is actually called the global scope. Now I am going to make it under a variable, or you can make a long comment like this, what you already have learned like this. So this is actually the global scope. Now I am going to show you another one, that is local scope. This is some kind of vice versa of the global scope. That means the variable which you will declare within a function, you can only access that within that function, but outside the function you cannot use it. For example, I am going to call it here. For example, I assign the variable is equal to 30 inside the function myAge, and here I want to show it, but when the function is ended, then it is actually outside the function. So this type of calling is outside the function and you cannot do it because the age has no value outside the function, but inside the function there is value, and this is called local scope. That means you can only use this variable inside this function. That means in this line this is okay, but here it will show error. Now let's check it. I am going to refresh. You will see that first one is showing, that is 30. If I go to make it off, you will understand. this is showing the output 30. But now if I make it on and make it off, you will understand that it will show an error. That means you cannot use the variable here. So this is actually in short the description about the local scope and global scope, and I hope you have understood this one. Now one interesting thing I am going to show you, that is I am going to make on comment. Okay, another important and another thing, that is global keyword. The global keyword is used to access a global variable from within a function. You see that the global variable cannot be used in this function. If I copy this code again, coming here, you see that outside the function it was 30, but inside the function you cannot use it. For example, if I want to run this code, there was actually error, right? But if I want to use this variable inside here, what I can do? I will just call here global. So global is. Now if I want to run this, you will see that it is working. That means inside the function I am calling that the age I want as a global variable. Which age is global variable? I want to call it here. So it will easily call this one into here, and so it will work here. So this is actually called the global keyword, and how it works I hope you have understood. The global keyword has another system to call, that is, instead of using like this, what I can do, I can easily call this variable into like this, that is globals, and here I call it as a parameter like this. If I call like this, you will see that if I run, here actually it will not be a small letter, it will be globals. Now it should work. I am going to refresh it. Yes, it is working. That means you can call the variable, the age, as global variable in this format. So this is another way to call it. I am now going to comment it or put it into here. Another one that I called here, I am going to put it also here. That was like this, echo is, but calling before that global is. Okay, so this was another logic. Now I am going to tell you what is a static keyword. This is another scope, that is when a function is executed, all of its variables are deleted. Sometimes we want a local variable not to be deleted. We need it for a further job, and to do this, use the static keyword when you first declare the variable. For example, I am going to tell you, I am just going to call a function myAge like this. Here I call age equal to 0. Now I am going to tell what is the variable x value. For example, I am going to increment the age by 1, for example. But before increment, I am going to do one thing, that is I am going to echo the age. Now I am going to call myAge. What will this function output? If I go here, refresh, you will see that it is showing 0. Because age is 0, then I assign the age as 0. So it is actually returning the 0, and the age I increment after that. Now I call another one. Now if I want to refresh, you see that another 0. That means what is going to be happen? I am going to initialize this age each time when the function is called. So always it is going to get 0, right? I incremented it by 1. That means in this line it is actually plus means age equal to age plus 1, right? So here output should be 0 plus 1 equal to 1. But actually it is not going to be happen. Why it is not going to be happen? Because after this line a is equal to 0, this is coming here as output my s, and then the s is incrementing by 1. That means in this line it is 1. But when I again call my s, going inside this function, it is again assigning 0. So 0 is in the output, and then it is going to be 1 here again, but never the 1 is going to be printed here. For this reason I again get 0. In order to solve this issue, what I am going to do this, that means in the function if I increment any value, then again call the updated value will be I will get. So here call here static. So here static is equal to 0. Static, sorry. If you assign this variable as static, now what you will see, if I go to refresh, you will see that first time it is 0, second time it is 1. So it is working. That means first time it is 0, second time 1. If I call it another time, then it will be 2, because every time it is going to be incremented by 1 with the previous value. So if I refresh, you will see that 0, 1, 2. So in this type of cases, the static keyword is going to be used.